Hello everybody and welcome to the One Little Fret workshop here on Crowdcast. I'm Bing Futch. Thank you guys for being here. My first big question to you is how are you doing? How you feeling out there? And for a more immediate response, I'm going to turn to the chat. Can you guys hear me okay? The 1.5 fret is something that is not quite yet standard with a lot of mountain dulcimer players, but it's gaining traction and popularity as people are discovering more what they can do with it. Now remember, back in the day, the mountain dulcimer didn't have any extra frets at all. It was a purely modal instrument, and what that means was it was meant to play in the 7 modes that were used for many, many years to play music, compose music, and enjoy music. And a mode is basically like a scale. A scale takes its direction on how it's going to behave from the key signature, and those 7 notes have to follow a pattern of rules set by that key signature. The mode, however, is a little bit different. It has 7 notes as well, but it doesn't take its key from the key signature. It actually takes its key from where it starts within the 7-note scale. So it's a little meta, if you will. But if you started the major scale from the first note, then you'd have a major scale, the Ionian mode. But if you started the scale from the second note of the major scale, you end up with the Dorian mode. And it's just how these intervals between notes sound as we pass them at different intervals and the distance between them. So if you take a look at your mountain dulcimer, other people may look at it and they may be guitar players, banjo players, mandolin players saying, "What's the matter with your frets? They're all different sizes and what's going on there?" Well, the wide spaces that we have on the dulcimer are whole steps, and the narrow spaces that we have are half steps. So if I were to take the 2nd fret and I went like this, you'd see that we have 2 half steps which make a whole step if I were to cover that up. So you can imagine where all of the wide spaces on your mountain dulcimer, that's where we're missing a note in the chromatic scale. So once again, these narrow spaces on the fretboard are all whole steps, and a chromatic scale has got 12 of these short steps, and they're all a half step apart. And then we've got these wide spaces, and those are basically 2 half steps put together. That's a whole step. We don't have the ability to play the note that's in between this fret and that fret unless we bend that note. We don't have the ability to play what's in between these 2 frets unless we had a fret or we bent that note as well. So if this were a guitar, banjo, mandolin, all the frets would look like this. But because we've got the mountain dulcimer, it was built to get rid of all the other music. Composers realized that they didn't want to use all 12 notes in the chromatic scale. So somewhere, somebody a lot smarter than me decided that to make pleasant music, all we needed were 7 notes, and we have the key signature system. So what the mountain dulcimer does is it takes away the other notes, the non-diatonic notes, and you're left with a diatonic instrument. At least until the late 40s, early 50s, when the 6.5 fret was added to give us the ability to play the major scale in DAD tuning, or in the Mixolydian mode tuning. We added this half step right here so we could get the complete major scale. And that was the first alteration to the mountain dulcimer. A lot of people resisted it, a lot of people still do. But nowadays it's standard. You can pretty much find it on any mountain dulcimer, and we've learned to use that 6.5 fret in beautiful, wonderful, and yes, colorful ways. Then along comes this thing, the 1.5 fret. Popularized in the early 70s, people began adding this fret for a lot of very, very good reasons. The 6.5 fret gave us the ability to play the major scale while tuned in DAD, which is Mixolydian, but it also gave us a whole bunch of other chords that we could play. Normally we were stuck playing one instance of a chord or another. We'd play E minor, we wouldn't play E major. We'd play F sharp minor, we wouldn't play F sharp major. We would play B minor, we wouldn't play B major. You had 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord for every key, and that was all we could play. But having that extra half step means we can alter the shape of chords and get additional colors. And that's what the 6.5 did for us. The 1.5 fret does the exact same thing. It adds us just a few more colors. And that's never a bad thing once you get used to how to work with it. And I think the biggest problem for a lot of people is it's messing me up visually. I look down there, I see this extra fret. I don't know what to do with it. I keep hitting it. I keep hitting wrong notes, all this stuff. So it can be very confusing if you're not sure exactly what it brings to the picture. So what we're going to do to kick off is to look at what the 1.5 fret brings to us when we're tuned in DAD. So hopefully everybody's tuned in DAD, and hopefully you've downloaded all of the resource material, because we'll be kind of looking at that as we go along. We'll learn about what this adds to the instrument, and then we'll also learn a tune, a very simple tune that utilizes the 1.5 fret, one that we couldn't play before, but with the 1.5 fret, we certainly can. So go ahead and get out your workshop materials, and I'm going to put one of these things up on the screen. So let's talk about, first of all, when we're in DAD tuning, what notes are we gaining down here by adding the 1.5 fret? So I'm going to flip out of here. Audio is good. Okay, that's a good sign. Let me go to the overhead camera. Okay, so here's our 1.5 fret. There's our first fret, our second fret, and our third fret. So the 1.5 fret is right on the top edge of this little trio now of half steps that we have. So just to the left of the fret is where we're pressing to get the notes. And what we've got added now is F on the bass string, C on the middle string, and then we've got F on the melody string, an octave above the bass string. So C is nothing new to us. We've had C at the 6th fret on the bass string and melody string, but it's nice having it down here, a lower position to add our C into chords, and we'll look at that in just a second. The Fs, however, are new, and they do give us some brand new superpowers that are super kind of fun, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we've got 2 notes that have been added down here in this first position area in the first 3 frets, F, C, and F. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the first page back up. So a couple of things that we can do here. First of all, the mountain dulcimer is notorious for kind of getting stuck in a small number of keys that it can play. Because we don't have chromatic scale, we can't just switch keys willy-nilly. We have to retune to get into other deals. And we have to put capos on and other things like that. And we're stuck in certain ranges. But with the 1.5 fret, we've opened up some things. And one of the things that we can do now without capoing is down here low, we can play a G major scale. And that's the first thing that we're looking at here. Measures 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's that G major scale ascending and then coming back down again. So I'm going to play them, and then I'm going to take the visual off the screen so you can see what I'm doing with my fingers. But we're starting off on the 3rd fret bass string with G. Then we're going to open middle string A, 1st fret B, 1.5 fret C natural, open melody will give us D, 1st fret will give us E, 2nd fret will give us F sharp, that's the only sharp in the key of G, and then G at the 3rd fret, an octave above where we started, on the bass string at the 3rd fret. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take the display down and then do that again for you guys. Starting here at the 3rd fret on the bass string, here's G. Then I'm going open middle string for A, 1st fret B. Then I'm going to the 1.5 fret for C. I could even go up to D here on the 3rd fret if I want to, but I'm going to go open melody string, 1st fret for the E, 2nd fret for F sharp, and 3rd fret for G, an octave above where we started. That's the G major scale. So that's nice because, we can play in the key of G now without having to capo at the 3rd fret and lose the first 3 fret range of notes that we can play. We're kind of losing a good portion of our fretboard, but now we can get down there and play that. And the chords that come with the key of G, G, C, and D, are easily reached right here in this first 3 fret range, now the first 4 fret range. We've got G major, 3, 1, 0. We've got a C major, 3, 1 and a half, 1. And then we can do our D any number of ways, 0, 0, 2, 2, 0, 0, 4, 3, 2, or 2, 3, 4. So we've got nice, juicy, rich, low, delicious chords all hanging out down here along with the G major scale without having to retune or use the capo. So that's really fabulous right there. The next thing we've got, if you look at the scale starting from the 5th fret, going from the 5th measure and going to the 8th measure, what we have here is the D minor scale. Now I want to be very careful to mention that this is the D minor scale Dorian mode and not what you would use for a natural minor. The reason being, in a natural minor scale, or with the simple minor scale, has 3 flats. The notes 3, 6, and 7 are all flattened. A Dorian minor, however, only has notes 3 and 7 flattened, and note 6 is normal. So you won't want to use this particular D minor if somebody else is playing in true D minor, because you'll be playing B and they'll be playing B flat, and there'll be a clash there. But if you can both avoid playing B or B flat, no problem, you can use this. So let me go ahead and put this right back up on the screen and play along with me here. This is the D minor scale, the Dorian mode version of the D minor scale. We're going to play open, 1, 1 and a half, 3, and then on the middle string open, 1, 1 and a half, and 3, like this. All right, and I'm going to do that again now without the graphic in the way, with the open on the bass string. This is D minor Dorian scale. Now let me show you where that normally would go if it was a D minor scale, the honest to goodness D minor scale, which is actually the Aeolian mode. The 6th note would be brought up a half step. So 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's B. Yes. So what we want to do is we want to flatten that note, and we can do it by going up here, and I can get B flat. So you can't bend your open A string to get this note. So when we're playing the Dorian, the D minor Dorian scale, that 6th note is going to be B natural. It should be B flat to be a true D minor scale. So if you avoid playing B when you're doing this, then you'll be fine. So just remember that if you want to use this for a true D minor, don't play B. You'd want to play B flat, and that's why the D minor scale actually sounds like this. B flat, C, and then D. Other than that, though, you can get away with a lot just by playing the pentatonic notes, which means the notes of the pentatonic, the D minor pentatonic scale. So you're just avoiding the B and you're leaving it out of the equation, and you can still kind of get into that D minor groove down here in the first 3 fret range. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the chords that are available to us. There are quite a few. Going back to page 1 here and bringing the graphic along. So we have our G major scale we can play in the first 3 fret range. We've got our D minor Dorian scale we can play in that same range as well. And now we've got some chords that we can bring to the table, and we already looked at one of them, which is C major. So we're playing 3, 1 1/2, 1. That is really cool, and one of my favorite reasons for having this low C major down here is when we're playing Old Joe Clark. Old Joe Clark, we start playing from the 4th fret. So our pitch range, our melodic pitch range is right around the middle of the dulcimer up here, and then it starts to come down here to the first 3 fret area over here. So it likes to hang out low, especially when we're going. And that's all happening down here. But what ends up happening is if you don't have the 1 1/2 fret and we want to play the C chord, we end up having to come up here to play 3 4 6 or 6 4 3, whereas the last notes we played are hanging out down here, so it sounds like a kind of a jarring jump to come up here. You know, or that was the jazzy version. You know, nothing really fits with the chord. But now that we've got this C major down here, it sounds a lot nicer when we apply this, and we're playing the melody note as part of the chord. That's one of my favorite things about the 1 1/2 fret, is having a nice low, luscious C major chord. What else do we have on the menu here? This is kind of fun. We have a C suspended 4 chord. A suspended chord is where you take the middle note of the chord, normally the 3rd note of the scale, and we suspend it. We move it to either the 2nd note of the scale or the 4th note of the scale. So in this case, we're taking the 3rd and we're moving it to the 4th note of the scale, which is why this is called a C sus 4 or a C suspended 4 chord. So we're taking this C major, C, E, and G. E is the middle note. We're playing E on the melody string down here. But remember, we have an F at the 1 1/2 fret. And F is the 4th note of the C major scale. So if I take the 3rd note of the C major chord, E, and I move it to F, I now have a beautiful and somewhat tense suspended chord, a C sus 4 chord. Listen to it move back and forth between the C major and the C sus 4. Isn't that a cool sound? That is such a great sound. If you've ever got a chord that's just sort of, you need to hold that chord for a long period of time, but you can't change the chord, but you want there to be something interesting happening. Some sort of activity and motion inside of the chord. A suspended chord is a great way to do it. You keep the same root, the low note of the chord, and it doesn't fundamentally alter anything except it gives you a little bit of that musical tension. And that tension wants to resolve right back to the original chord. Now, as I mentioned, you can take that 3, that 3rd note of the chord, or the 3rd note of the scale, the middle note of the chord, and you can take that and move it down to the 2nd note of the scale, which in this case would be D for C major, and that would be called a C sus 2 chord. So I'll go from C major down to a C sus 2 by playing 3 1 1/2 open. Really pretty, really nice. It's got tension. It's not like a really kind of an edgy tension. It's kind of an expectant tension. There's a lot of expectation in this. And if I move back and forth between C major, C sus 4, and C sus 2, we have a lot of motion and a lot of mileage we're getting out of this C major here. It's really, really nice sounding stuff. And you can do this with a number of chords on the mountain dulcimer if we have the ability to take that third, the middle note of the chord, and shift it to either the second note of the scale or the fourth note of the scale. That is the C suspended 4 and 2 chord. Now, this next chord is super important because we had absolutely no earthly way of playing it until we got the 1.5 fret with these F. This is F major, and in an L-shaped chord, we're going 1.5, 1.5, 4. And there's F major. Now, I might use this opportunity to mention to folks that if you get the 1.5 fret, if you're watching right now and you are just interested in what you can do with it before you get one, I always remind people to get the 1.5 fret and get the 8.5 fret because there are chords you can get with the 8.5 that you can't get with the 1.5, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But here is our F major, 1.5, 1.5, 4. This is really important for a couple of reasons. One, it gives us the ability to play very simple songs, 1, 4, 5 tunes in the key of C. 1, 4, 5 songs are songs that the chords are built off the first note of the scale, the fourth note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. In the case of C major, that would be C, F, and G. So we've got this low C down here. Right in the same neighborhood, we've got an F. And right in the same neighborhood, we have a G. So let's say that you're playing something in the key of D, and it's real difficult to sing. And D is a hard key to sing in for a lot of people, women and men. So let's say you're doing Amazing Grace and you're singing D, and you're Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. So the 1, 4, 5 chords for D major are D, G, and A. So you want to transpose that down a step from D to C and see if it's going to help your ailing throat. So using your 1, 4, 5 chords, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. So that's really cool because you don't have to retune your entire dulcimer down to C, G, C and then use the tab you already have. If you're only going to use those 3 chords, then you can play hundreds and thousands of songs in the key of C now because you've got the 1.5 fret. That means also if you find yourself in the jam and they start jamming to a fiddle tune in the key of C, you can also play the chords and back up with that. As far as playing melody notes for the key of C, just avoid any sharps. Everything else on your mountain dulcimer will work fine in the key of C. Just don't play your F sharps, your C sharps, and your G sharps, and everything will sound great. So that opens up our frontiers quite a bit. Because we used to have to retune to do everything, and now this is just taking us closer to a point where we can do less retuning, but also means we have to think a little bit more about what those notes are and what will happen if we put our fingers there.